Hello, this is Brian Foster on Kardec Radio, presenting the program Spiritism and the Spirit World Around Us. Hello, tonight, February 11th, 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific, and time zones all around the world. The year 2018, we are going to talk on our second episode about the appearances of Jesus in the spirit world. Very exciting program, and it's one I don't think you'll want to miss. But first, let's talk about where are we talking from. We are on Kardec Radio. Kardec Radio is you can get that on your iPhone or your Android device. Just go to the iPhone store or the PlayStation store, and you can download Kardec Radio, Kardec Radio. And that app will be on your phone, and you can listen to Spiritist programs 24 hours a day. You can also then, please join us on Kardec Radio face page book. We have many streaming. Every day there's 2 or 3 different streamings. There's conversations. So again, please join us on the Kardec Radio Facebook stage. Oh, hello, Marilda. So again, there's different ways. I also have a blog on nwspiritism.com, and I have that in my window below. You can see nwspiritism.com. I have many articles and many links to other spiritist groups, and also the books that I've written. And also on the top right hand, there's a picture of Allan Kardec. You can click on him and go to the EDI-CEI bookstore, which is a spiritist bookstore, and you can find all sorts of books by Chico Xavier, Leon Denis, Yvonne Pierre, and other spiritist authors. The other one I also want to tell you, if you're interested in Spiritism, please read the Spirits book. And if you look up Allan Kardec and then type in space PDF, you will find all of his books on PDF, so you can get all of his books for free. That's how I found Spiritism. But let's talk about tonight. Tonight is appearances of Jesus in the spirit realm. So through his life and teachings, Jesus inspired a revolution, an upheaval of society that was forever altered. And his presence is still felt on earth today and is constant in the spirit world. For Jesus is still with us. He is looking down and guiding our progress. All of humanity, every soul is important to him. But we, the incarnates, the people here on earth, aren't the only beings who require help. Spirits on lower levels of heaven also require a visit from on high to help clarify their struggle and direction. On December 11th, 1917, a group of spirits residing on the 10th level of heaven, with Kathleen as the spirit who spoke directly to the Reverend G. Vale Owen, described a visit by Jesus to the citizens of a lower level of heaven, what they termed as Sphere 2. Now, of course, as I said before in these talks, the spirits who talked to Reverend G. Vale Owen just numbered these spheres so that they could be consistent amongst the different spirits who talked to him. So the number system is not necessarily used by other spirits talking to other spiritist mediums. So on this relatively low plane of heaven, where people are good and uncomplaining, they too at times feel frustration in carrying out their work, just like us here on earth. When you work for a large corporation, there's groups, there's people trying to help your morale, they're trying to help you motivate yourselves. And so therefore, heaven becomes less of a mysterious place, right? As we've said before, as spiritists know, heaven is not an ethereal cloud where people play harp music and you just contemplate all day. I mean, that would be a horrible existence to have nothing to do. So there's always work to do, and sometimes this work, there is obstacles, because many of the spirits in these spheres and the spheres around the earth come to the lower zone, come to even below that, the dark abyss, and they try and help the incarnate, us here on earth, and then the discarnates, the errant spirits who are around on earth. So there is a lot of work to do. And on this sphere, Sphere 2, there was a group of spirits whose task was to sort newly arriving souls, to determine where they should be sent to in order for them to be able to prosper as well as they are able. And in their work, this group of spirits on Spirit 2, they begin to doubt themselves and feel they were inadequate to the job at hand. And when this occurs on earth and in heaven, people's productivity and satisfaction declines due to an uneasiness in their sense of direction and worth. Therefore, something had to be done. And in response, this was the action taken on the spirit realm. And this was told by the spirit, Kathleen, through a group of spirits talking to her, to Reverend Vale Owen. This is what they said. The angel Lord of the colony came forth of his house and called the multitude, and they came with sad faces, many with their glances bent on the ground, with no heart to look upon the fairness of his beauty. When they were assembled before the high flights of stairs on which he stood outside the portico of his dwelling, he spoke to them in quiet tone of voice and told them not to be poor of heart, for one before them had felt as they did now, and he had won through, and because when clouds came between him and his father's face, he still held on and would not distrust, but called his father still. And while he spoke, one after another, they lifted up their eyes to him and saw his majesty and his glowing, for he was of a higher sphere, he who had in charge this very difficult colony. And gradually, as he spoke gently to them with words of penetrating wisdom, they saw a mist begin to come about him and envelop him, and slowly his form seemed to dissolve in the cloud of mist, which condensing closed him with a mantle cast about him. At length they saw him no longer, but lo, upon the steps where he stood, another form began to appear, the form of one, of lovelier countenance and brighter radiance than he. And what she was talking about is this is Christ coming, right? So the high spirit, who was brighter than those spirits in level 2 for them. But now Jesus, of course, Christ, of course, was even brighter than this high spirit. So continuing the quote, brighter he grew, and there he emerged into view about his brow a thorny chaplet with blood drops beneath and on his breast, as if they had but now fallen. But as he grew brighter, those thousands of tired eyes grew brighter too, and they became lost in amaze at his exceeding glory of loveliness. The crown became changed into one of gold and rubies. The red drops upon his breast were gathered together into a clasp upon his shoulder to hold in place. And the robe he wore beneath his mantle glowed with the gold light of his radiant form beneath, which shone with its gossamer like molten silver with a tincture of sunlight in its texture. And the face of him I cannot explain to you, for it is not possible in your words of earth more than to say that the majesty of the all-conquering Redeemer was there. His brow was the brows of creator of worlds and cosmos, and yet with frail beauty of a woman's brow, where the hair fell apart in the center. The chaplet spoke of kingship, and yet there was no pride of rule in the softness of the wavy hair, and his long lashes rather called upon our tenderness, while his eyes made us both love and reverence him, but in awe. Well, slowly the vision of him melted into the atmosphere. I do not say faded away, for as we felt that he became more and more visible to sight, yet his form was becoming vaporized as the air became more and more enforced with the very presence of him. And then at last he was gone from our sight. And where he had been, we saw once more the angel Lord of the colony. But now he stood no longer, but with one knee aground, his forehead rested upon the other, and his hands were clasped about his forward foot. So still he was in rapture of communion that we left him there and went our ways. Only now we stepped with light tread and hearts uplifted. We were weary no more, but ready for our task. Whatever it should be, he spoke no word while we stood looking upon him, but in our hearts, I am with you in all the ages, sounded very clear. And so we went to our work in great content and resolute. So here's Christ, who never even said a word to the people, to the multitude assembled before him. And yet, just by his presence and by the feeling that they absorbed, they felt better. They felt more resolute. They felt more ready for the job ahead. They felt they had certainty in that what they were doing was important. And in the manner in which one reads a description of the appearance of Jesus is as important as the event itself. So why? Because your reaction, and quite possibly an entire sequence of reactions, could be illustrative of your balance of materialism and spiritualism. Let me explain. Let me provide how I read the above passage. First, I knew leading up to Jesus' appearance, there was a slightly demoralized workforce. Then the people gathered in a downhearted state. Next, the head of their work group talked and actually functioned as an introduction to the arrival of Jesus. His presence alone completely turned around the group. Now, when I first thought about this, I caught myself thinking of situations here on earth, whereupon the CEO or president of the company would appear to rally the troops, as if we were excited just to see him or her. Forefront in our minds was the fact that this person only saw us in terms of dollars and cents, and would replace us in a second if it would be profitable to do so. Plus, the fact that we all know that person on the stage had no clue of the work we fulfilled. The chief executive's main talent was sounding completely sincere and telling us to work more and harder so the management team could make even more money. We also knew that as soon as the gathering was ended, the management team would all congratulate themselves on a sterling job at motivating the workforce. That was the materialist part of me, as you could interpret, as I interpreted that passage of Christ in the spirit world. But then I moved on and reflected that all I just thought, while perfectly reasonable on the physical plane, was detrimental to my spiritual side. First, Jesus did in fact make a great sacrifice while on earth. I was never tortured, nailed to the cross in a quest to enlighten a mass of people, most of whom didn't care and had better things to do. Second, the people who have ascended in heaven didn't rise because they were born into it, had a friend, bribed their way, played political games, are married into positions of power. No, they stood where I had stood. They worked longer and harder than I have done to date. Their modus operandi is and always will be love. Third and lastly, my attitude of being skeptical is exactly what most probably has kept me from growing spiritually. My frame of reference, where I believe others are trying to gain me as my first response, is not the state of an open heart like a child, for that is what I need to work on the most. I intellectualize a problem or a situation, but I don't engage it in an emotional and loving nature, an open emotional nature. That is my failure, for it is the combination of intellectual curiosity governed by constant love and fraternity that is a prerequisite for spiritual advancement. So all that is important to see is not only is Jesus here on earth, but what he is in the spirit realm. And so that leads to the question, so us here on earth, who is Jesus? And that's a question that's been asked for over 2,000 years. But more importantly, the question should be, what is Jesus? Because that's what we need to understand. Because that will determine our own path to advancement and our own goals. So what is Jesus? For first, he is a very high spirit who is not only in charge of our small planet, he was responsible for the formation of our entire solar system and more. In the book, On the Way to the Light, Psychograph by Francisco, also known as Chico C. Xavier, in 1939, dictated to him by the spirit mentor Emmanuel. Emmanuel tells us that Christ is a member of the community of pure spirits and was instrumental in the formation of our solar system. The first meeting was to determine the formation of our solar system, and the second when it was decided to send Jesus to our planet to bring his message to Earth. Emmanuel goes on to describe how Christ, leading his contingent of spirit beings, directed and fashioned the earth. This is what he said in this book, On the Way to Light, which I recommend to anyone who would like to understand the whole arc of history. To me, that book just completely changed my whole outlook on history. And I understood how we are subtly maneuvered into growth periods that span not just, years or decades or centuries, but thousands of years. This is what Emmanuel wrote in his book, The Psychograph by Chico Xavier, On the Way to the Light. With his armies of devoted workers, he established the rules for Earth's physical phenomena. setting their future stability on the foundation of the simple bodies of matter, whose substantial unity Earth's spectroscopes have witnessed so far and wide in the galactic universe. He organized the scenario of life, creating under God's eyes what was essential for the lives of the beings to come. He made the atmosphere pressure suitable for human beings in anticipation of their birth over the course of the millennia. He established great centers of energies in the ionosphere and stratosphere where the electrical phenomena of planetary existence were harmonized, and he constructed ozone factories at 40 and 60 kilometers high to filter the sun's rays appropriately, manipulating their exact composition for maintaining organized life on the globe. He set out all the lines of progress for future mankind, engendering the harmony of all the physical forces that preside over the cycle of planetary activities. So, hence, Jesus is more than a humble carpenter who was born on earth and preached a new path, showing God's love. He came at the time of his choosing to set in motion great historical events, which are still in play today. And all of this is trivial compared to his overall power and majesty. On December 12th, 1917, a group of spirits residing on the 10th level of heaven with Kathleen, as the spirit who spoke directly to the Reverend G. Vale Owen, attempted to explain Jesus, that he wasn't only a unique spirit who came to us in our time of need, but a high spirit whose exact competition is unknown to the spirits communicating to the Reverend G. Vale Owen. This is what they told him. This is very interesting. So think of this. These are spirits compared to us, very high, right? And even they do not totally understand Jesus. And as I said before in other talks, spirits in the spirit plane around the earth, they don't, as God is almost as much as a mystery to them as God is a mystery to us. So this is what they told him about Jesus. So far as we've been taught, friend, the Christ was present in the earth sphere when it was without form. That is, when it was non-material. When matter began to be, he was the master spirit through whom the Father wrought into orderly constellation the material universe, as you now understand it. But although he was present, yet he himself was also formless and took upon himself not material form, but spiritual form, as the universe became endued with its outer manifestation and so took the form of matter. He was behind the whole phenomena, and the whole process passed through the Christ as the ages went along and matter grew from chaos into a cosmos. That were not possible except for some dynamic entity operating from outside and superior to the chaos and working downward into the chaos. For order cannot come out of what is lacking in order except by the addition of a new ingredient. It was the contact of the Christ sphere with chaos that resulted in the cosmos. Now think about it. I'm going to repeat that. The contact of the Christ sphere with chaos that resulted in the cosmos. So in this Christ sphere, and I think what they infer too is not just our own Jesus Christ that we know, but there are other spirits on the same level, and there's probably spirits maybe even higher level than Christ, than our Christ. And so here's what you're told. This is what was told by the Reverend G. Vale Owen. Chico Xavier, on the book Psychograph with the Spirit Emmanuel, received his communications in Brazil in 1939. So we compare 1939, 1917, one in 22 years later, not from the same spirit nor language, but from two distinct groups of spirits, each communicating to their contact in different languages. In essence, we are told that Jesus, a very high spirit, who in some manner is not revealed to us, receives order from God and he carries them out. We aren't notified if Jesus gets his commands directly from God or from even higher spirits, only that Jesus, using the force of his will and of his subordinates, manipulates an elemental component of the universe called universal's fluid by Spiritism. That's first mentioned in the books by Allan Kardec, and transforms it into matter in many and various forms, matter that will be alive as we know it, matter which will evolve along lines broadly suggested by Jesus. and guided by all of his minions. Now, all of this is commanded from a universe above our physical universe, for we live in a subset of the spirit universe. We are like the large aquarium in the living room. The fish only know life in that small space and a few vague concepts beyond it, while the humans look upon the fish, beautiful, innocent, and ignorant of the external space surrounding them. The groups of spirits further explain that all motion of the universe is the sum of the force of wills that place matter into play. A high spirit mind takes universal fluid and transforms it according to their own unique mind force. Therefore, who creates stamps their identity and character onto what they have made. So again, let's look at, so think of us inside that aquarium. We only see the world of the aquarium, and yet it really is a tiny little corner of the living room or the dining room or wherever it's called. And there's a whole world out there, a whole world that we have no idea, that is totally beyond us. It exists in a different dimension. So think about that. So hence, our Christ was one of the key forces to produce our world. He is not only our Savior, as said in the New Testament, but his character and personality is infused in everything on earth. Minerals, vegetable, and animals, everything quite literally contains some remnant, some idea, right, of the body of Christ. And the spirits detected the perplexity of the mind of the Reverend G. Vale Owen, so they attempted to elucidate on this. And this is what they said. The Christ who was one with the Father, and being one with the Father, was of the Father's selfhood. Jesus of Nazareth was the expression of the thought of the Father, incarnate as the Christ for earth's salvation. Bethink you a little, for I see a slight disturbance in your mind. On other planets of your system are beings not unlike men. On other planets of other systems are beings not unlike men also. In other constellations, there be those who are related reasonably to God and his Christ, and can commune with their Creator, also do men. But they are not of human form, nor of human method of thought communion, which you call speech. And yet to them, the Creator and his Christ stand in the same relation as they do to you. And it has been, and it still is, necessary that their Christ become manifest to them from time to time, and inform themselves, have evolved. But then he goes to them not as Jesus of Nazareth in human form, which to them would be less helpful than strange. He goes to them in their own form and with their own methods of communication, and uses their own rational processes. So think about that. It's not just our Christ. There's other worlds in other human form, some probably quite similar, maybe some not so similar, that Christ goes to and meets them and communicates with them in their form and in their form of thought. So I believe what's being said here are two main ideas. First, the concept of Christ is used for all planets that require advancement in our universe and other parallel material universes. Each form of human life goes through a process of learning, and when reaches a certain plateaus of knowledge and culture, a Christ figure descends and helps them to lead onto the correct path towards enlightenment. This is logical. For as one school system shares basic principles with other schools within each country, and even throughout the world, so does the process of advancements for planets, whereby the human-like souls emerging out of a primitive existence must be led to the correct road, a highway of love, fraternity, charity in their daily interactions. Because after all, we're not unique. We're not the center of the universe like we thought thousands of years ago. We are just one more school or one more campus in the vast universes of different dimensions. And what we are going through is no big mystery. They understand that we try and resist as much as possible becoming more civilized spirits. We try to resist as much as possible becoming loving, no envy, no jealousy, right? not materialistic. It's that has to be trained out of our nature. The second point is the possible variations of human forms that may be present throughout the galaxies. Spiritists in Brazil report that Jesus is in fact in charge of at least 4 planets, all at different stages of development. Hence, when Jesus communicates with people of other paths of evolution, he must come to them in their own image, human-like, but not exactly human in form, for some planets and other forms of intelligent life, not in concert with ours. At the end, the spirits tell us about Christ. This is what they told Reverend Vale Owen. The highest expression of his will was mankind, and in due time he came forth of the invisible into the visible world. He who had made man was himself made man. He by whom man came to be and to persist thought forward into matter, and his thought took on the expression in Jesus of Nazareth. So he who was anointed agent of the Creator for the making of man himself became the Son of Man, whom he made. So what we're being told is as if an inventor created a robot, an android who could think, live independently, and procreate to extend its species. These robots could not see their inventor, for they lived in a controlled environment, not knowing that anything beyond what they could detect existed. Then the inventor, seeing the androids needing a new direction, decided to have his conscience transferred to the body of a new baby robot, so he could grow amongst them and show them as an equal what they had not known before. Hence the inventor was the father of the robots, but also a son, since he came to them as a child in order to light a new path. Jesus, our Christ manifestation, is our Father in that he guided our final form under the influence of God. And Jesus, who in his previous lives on other planets may never have appeared as a human until he first came to earth as our Savior. So what do they know about the home of Christ? So the abode of Christ is as remote from the spirits communicating to the Reverend Vale Owen as the concept of heaven is from us. While we are mostly matter and spirits are a combination of energy and matter, the ratios changing in favor as energy as one ascends. There is something else, something grand. And this is what the higher spirits told the Reverend Vale Owen. And let me say again, all this information is in this book, Heaven and Below, Book 1 of Spiritism, the Spirit World Revealed to the Anglican Vicar. What I have done is I've taken all the communications from the high spirits, the Reverend Vale Owen, and categorized them into different areas. Like now I'm talking about the appearances of Christ. I also talk about the spirit world, the power of spirits, the attributes of spirits, the future of the earth. And I've tried to take this, and what I've done is I've taken the writings that Vale Owen did, the communications that he had, and compare them with other spiritualist communications from Joanna de Angelis, Chico Xavier, Emmanuel, etc. And what I'm trying to show is that the knowledge and the information given to the Reverend Vale Owen was so revelatory, and it complemented and it expanded on what we've learned so far from probably the main number of books from the Spiritist mediums in Brazil, which is Chico Xavier, Divaldo Franco, Yvonne Pereira, and some others. So this is what the spirits told Reverend Vale Owen about the home of Christ. And yet, as we have become to know that spirit, sublime as it is in essence, is not the sum of being. As beyond the realm of the material stretches the spiritual, so beyond those far and distant heights of light impenetrable and holiness and awful purity towards which we think our way, there lies being, which is not spirit alone, but which into itself absorbs all that spirit at its widest sublimity, and encompasses the sum total of spirit resultant in a universe of sublimity higher still. So what does that mean exactly? I am not sure. It means something grand. So all we can kind of think is where are we at our level now? So first, spirits from one level to the next, highest, are successfully brighter, not from a source of energy radiating light from their spirit bodies, but from the reflection of love from the atmosphere in the spirit universe. This is why angels appear to be fuzzy outlines of a human form. The light emanating from them makes it difficult for lower creatures to see their true features. To angels on the same plane, they appear as normal people to each other. The communication speaks to a grander level than pure spirit energy and the total absence of matter. It hints at a more than casual connection to the sea of data which exists in the spirit universe. It is as if a spirit becomes a God creator and is in part and indecipherable from the universe around him. The spirits explain further. This is what they say. Let us therefore follow Christ on his heavenly way. Remembering that, being lifted up and exalted, he draws all men after him, trailing his myriads along the heavenly road among the glories of the spheres toward the home from which he came, and that where he is they might also be one day. Okay, so what does that mean? Therefore, this exalted state is not one given by birth, but by exertion in life after life, living through critical trials and tests to prepare oneself for husbanding life on multiple planets. We are at the bottom rung of a ladder that stretches beyond our imagination. And it was just good because we have all of eternity to get there. Our rate of climb depends entirely on our dedication. We are Christ's subjects, and our welfare and spiritual promotion is ever the aim of his administration. And this is more of what the spirits told the Reverend Vale Owen. As the ages blend into ages yet to come, so the glory of the Christ intensifies. For every new recruit coming into his army adds a spark to the luster of his shining kingdom, which is viewed, so we are told, by those who stand aloft on the dizzy heights of the realm, which is most distant and lofty of all, as in the realm of matter you view a distant star. In the ocean of spirit, all the spheres of the Christ are gathered into one great star, and can be viewed exteriorly by those who dwell on high. That is not possible for us to adequately to comprehend, and we may get some small idea of the meaning thus. From the earth, you are unable to see the solar system as a unit, for you in the midst of that system and a part of it, but one standing aloft on Arcturus would see one small sphere of light, and in that sphere would be comprised your sun and his planets and their moons. So do you view Arcturus and the other millions of stars you see from Earth. So the kingdom and spheres of Christ are viewed from the realm afar, and age by age that system grows in brightness as the races which go to make up the whole evolve more and more out of the material into the spiritual. In this I speak of the whole spiritual economy as one star, and those who are placed to view it are they who dwell on those far steps of being, which are beyond the realms of the spirit, in the great void of the unknown and incomprehensible. That's a lot to go through. I mean, do I understand exactly what they're saying? No. But what I believe is we are but one universe in a sea of universes. Again, like the fish in the tank, there are beings we can't fathom outside of the glass walls of our aquarium. But unlike the water creatures, we have the capacity, we, humankind, are able to grow out of our confinement and into the vast reaches outside. We are wrong to consider our ascendancy as an individual effort. For the task of higher spirits is to bring us as a collective whole up a notch. The aim is to take us up level after level, just as a kindergartner starts out, right, with simple social interaction, and eventually, grade after grade, is ready to go out into the world and become a productive member of society. The spirit realm awaits to see our light shining brighter, denoting our success in finding the path towards love, charity, fraternity, and honesty. And we are toiling away just to reach the initial spheres of heaven, which is a wonderment and a destination worth every material sacrifice to attain. And on the other hand, we should keep in mind that this is but one step. As told in the Spirit's book, heaven isn't the Elysian fields, where one is in eternal leisure, but an unimaginable cascading of intellectual and emotional challenges, all designed to foster our continual improvement, while simultaneously providing an atmosphere of absolute love and fraternity, whereby we are free to pursue what enchants us. So think about this for a second. Heaven is just must be immensely dense of data and information. And as Christ, right, who thought us with his will, and higher spirits who create just with their minds, right, with their will. This is why we're on earth, and this is why we are going through the trials and tribulations we are going through. We need to learn to control ourselves. It's like all of us are sitting on a nuclear bomb of immense power. And if one wrong thought will destroy everything. And therefore, why would anyone trust us in the higher levels of heaven with the way our minds work now? I surely wouldn't trust me. I wouldn't want anybody like me being too high. No, that's why, like pilots in the simulator, where they simulate time after time, crashes, different things that have happened, to get them to understand exactly what they need to do. That's why we are here. The spirits who spoke with the Reverend G. Vale Owen tells us that we are just beginning our long march towards an unknowable but divine future. Like it or not, we have been drafted into Christ's legions, and we are in boot camp, learning to parade together to a destination that even our commanding officers aren't sure of. Again, this is what the spirits told Reverend G. Vale Owen. So far ahead are those of whom we speak, that we who have progressed 10 spheres in spirit can count ourselves no nearer to them than you of earth. Yet as the whole of the constellations of suns marched onward in an orderly formation towards a sure if distant goal, so the spheres of spirit march onwards towards their destiny when the pilgrimage of spirit shall blend into that which is beyond and find there its consummation. To this end, the Christ, bending down from his Father's bosom, touched humankind with the tip of his finger, and man became electrified with that life divine, which pulses within his souls with onward urge, that in the train of the sovereign prince he may keep his rank with those of other planets, who together march forward as one army of the Father on the vice-regency of his Son. So, when we pass over to the other side, we shall experience the spirit domain once again, regaining memories of past lives and our spirit existence. Whereas some of us may believe that once we shed our physical bodies, we shall learn the secrets of the universe and of God. Unfortunately, instead, we shall be but one step closer. But the deepest workings of the universe will still be mysterious. It matters not, for we have a leader who is guiding us in our advancement. It only remains for us to have trust in his leadership, to approach each assignment with an open mind and heart, and to believe that everything has and will happen to us is planned for our benefit. To resist does nothing except to slow down the process to proceed ahead, which is your free will to do so. For no one is forced beyond what they wish. One that you may be missing in one of the wonders of the universe just around the corner. So take a step there. Just think about what we've said. There's a world of unimaginable complexity, dimensions, and universe, and intellectual thought out there. And there are people here who say, well, heaven is what you think. Heaven is what you think. Heaven is in your own mind. And yes, they are partially correct. But what they forget is, and then when they say, well, God is in all of us are own God. And of course, again, they are partially correct. But what I think they're missing is that this grand environment of training us, so that when we go to heaven, we kind of create what we think it is, right? Thought is action, right? You create your own environment. But then you're not just this isolated environment that you create your own universe out of nothing. You are tied in. You're connected to everyone else. You're connected to Jesus. You're connected to other high spirits. You're connected to everyone around you. And therefore, you become one. This is why we have the law of affinity. You become part of whatever group you best fit into. That's why the law of affinity stops us from passing on and going to the spirit world, all creating our own little heavens, our own little whatevers. right? Our own little paradises, because then we are actually involved and we work with others to create a much grander universe, a much grander set of new environments. So let's go on to the next subject I want to go through, and that is what happened to Judas. And I'll take the last part of our talk talking about that. So poor Judas Iscariot, right? He's been a pariah for thousands of years, but if Jesus is truly loved, wouldn't he forgive Judas? Of course he would. And we are told what happened. Now, other spiritist writers have told, mediums, I should say, have told what happened. But this is what was told to the Reverend Vale Owen on December 17th, 1917, again through Kathleen. And the group of spirits who were working with the Reverend Vale Owen, they went together, they're relating this story, they went together to the Temple of the Holy Mount on the 10th level of heaven. It is the place where spirits from high levels travel, so they can reside in an atmosphere closer to their own plane, while enabling spirits from the 10th level to remain comfortable in their own environment. As one of its attributes, the temple is meant as a place for face-to-face communication between spirits of different spheres. Facilitating learning is constantly emphasized in the spirit realm. The group approached the temple and they were allowed in. They were greeted at the door by a glowing spirit. There were no planned ceremonies that day, which made the small group relax, since the presence of very high spirits radiates intense light in all directions and makes seeing and movement difficult for inferior souls. And the group walked into the temple, and this is what they said. We found we were in a long colonnade, and on either side the pillar supported a beam running from the porch to the bowels of the temple itself. But above us there was no roof, but the void of infinity itself, the vault of heavens, as you say. The pillars were of great diameter and height, but the beam atop much decorated in its plinten facade, but with symbols which we are unable to unravel. Only one factor of the pattern could I personally recognize, and that was the tendril and leaf of the vine. But of the fruit there was none, which to me seemed quite right in such a place, which was but the passageway, as was the whole of the temple, from one sphere into another. It was not a place of fruition. At the end of this long and wide passage, curtains were hung, and as we were halted before them, while our guide went further, and then returned to bid us enter. Even when we had passed through into the place beyond, we found we were no wise within the great hall itself, but only in an antechamber. This ran across our path as we entered it, not at one of its ends, but in its side length. It was of a very large size in area, and also in height. A square of the roof opened in the middle before the door as we entered, but all the other part was covered with roof. So their guide bid them to stay in front of the throne and asked them to wait for a seer who will speak with them about their mission. And as the guide finished, the seer walked into the group, and this is what the group said. He was taller than our guide, and around him as he moved, there seemed to be a mist of blue and gold, set with sapphires. He came forward and touched each of us by the hand. And as we touched his fingers, we became aware, as we told one another afterwards, of the proximity of a sphere. Within the sphere, 10, which was a concentrated essence of its conditions, so that entering within the circumference of that inner sphere, we were in touch with all that was going forward in the whole of that wide realm in all its parts. So, I mean, these things are more fantastic than any science fiction book or movie you can see, right? So imagine walking along the street, strolling on the sidewalk, feeling the sounds, the hustle and bustle of the city. Then a person comes up to you and your sense of the city expands exponentially, whereby you feel each person living their life, each car whizzing by, each door opening and closing, and you know the volume of water being used by each household at that particular moment. Such is the power and omnipresence of the spirit realm, each higher level filled with unimaginable supremacy. Each of us is being prepared for ascending into this land of completeness and connectedness. This blissful state whereupon you feel part of the whole, but the same instant yourself, a distinct personality, with characteristics that only you could bring to make the whole greater and more perfect. This is heaven. This is what you are working for on earth. This is worth the price of toiling to make yourself a loving and caring creature. So the seer walked about the group, talked to the group about issues they were unable to describe to Vale Owen. But then he told them about Jesus while he was on the crucifix, and that Judas was there, watching Jesus slowly die on the cross. The seer told him that Judas, this is what he said, he could not bring himself to keep away and stood not very near, but near enough to see the features of the dying man, the man of sorrows. The crown had been removed, but the blood drops were upon his forehead, and his hair was here and there stained with blood. And as the betrayer looked upon the face and form of him, there came into his soul a voice which mocked and said, as you would have gone with him into his kingdom, and there have taken high place of power, go now into the kingdom of his adversary. There you may have power for the asking. He has failed you. Go now where he will not be at hand to reward you as you have served him. So the voices came about Judas, and he strove to believe them and to look into the face of the one on the cross. He was eager and yet in fear of those eyes into which he had never been able to look with comfort at any time. But the sight of the dying Christ was all too dim, and he did not see Judas Iscariot, there. And still the voices hummed on and taunted him and cajoled him more gently. And at length, in the gloom about the place, he rushed away and let out his life in a place where he found solitude and a tree. He took off his girdle and hung himself to death on a tree. So they two died on the tree, both on the same day, and the light of the earth went out for them both at the same hour. And when they entered the spirit spheres, both were conscious, and they met once again, but neither spoke. Only as he had looked on as Peter, so he had looked on Judas now, and left him for a time in the sorrow, in anguish, till that he should do its work when he might come again with pardon. As he did with Simon when he went forth into the night to weep, so he did now with Judas, who turned and stumbled away from him with his hands to his eyes in the night of the hells. And as he did with Simon in his penitence and his sorrow and his sore need, he did with the one who had felled him in his loneliness, as Simon also did. He did not leave him comfortless all his days, but sought him out and gave to him the blessing of his pardon in the bitter anguish of his sorrow. So Christ loves and forgives us all, for he knows how weak and frail we are. He knows because he too has traveled the hard and rocky road to perfection that we are all on. We fail every day, but that is important to Jesus or the spirit world. What is imperative is that we learn from our mistakes and continue to improve. I read something by the Spirit Joanna de Angelis. It says, think of your failures like the arrows in the quiver, right? The arrows are shot. They're gone. Learn what you can from them, but don't go back. Don't go back and kill yourself over past failures, over past mistakes. You're here to move on and to learn the next class. And then also to talk more about Judas is from what I've learned from Spiritism Brazil, from talks in Portuguese posted on YouTube, is that Judas was selected to be one of the apostles while he was still in the spirit world. His friends urged him not to try to perform his arduous mission, but he insisted. Jesus, being a superior spirit, saw what would happen and therefore used Judas to lead his tormentors to him so his death on the cross could occur. Judas, wishing to atone for mistakes, took various lives, but the most historic character in which he returned to earth was Joan of Arc. Judas volunteered to come back to earth to set in place the boundaries and territories between England and France, knowing full well that he would be doomed to die, burned alive at the stake. Hence, there is no grand mistake we cannot atone for. Everyone has the path to return to the light, no matter how terrible they had been in the past. This is why some people live tragic lives, for they are facing head-on what they have done and are seeking redemption for their deeds. In fact, one of the first Spiritist meetings my wife and I were at in Brazil, we were told that we had been on the earth before together, and we had failed time and time again. I can't tell you how bad that made us both feel. And that we were told that we selected treasure over helping our fellow men. And and I can see how easy that would be, right? And it just shows you how weak and frail we are. But it didn't let us keep us down, right? We were determined to do better in this life. And that's what we all must do, is we must have that determination to do better, to focus on what is good, to focus on what we can do, We can't do everything. Look, no one expects any of us to come and be like Chico Xavier or Mother Teresa. You know, she wasn't a medium, but she was a wonderful person. And no one expects that. So all we can do is each step, little by little, improve ourselves. Because what are we told over and over again in the books by Chico Xavier and by Andre Luis is that the suffering we go through here on earth through these episodes, that's the white heat, right? It's like putting the clay pot into the fire, right? It sets the clay. It makes it hard, and that's what we are. Right now we're young spirits, relatively speaking. We are trying to get rid of our blemishes, right? And we are trying to set into the foundations of our character goodness, loving, right? The persistence in goodness, the intellectual curiosity that we should all have, right? And, you know, to get rid of selfishness, pride. I mean, that's very hard, right? And if you look in the Spirits book, one of the questions, I forgot which one, they say, you know, what's the root cause of this? And most of it, it's selfishness. Selfishness, it goes on with pride, right? It's we want what we want. It's like little children who, you know, won't share, right? It's kind of amusing at first, but we're the same way, right? We only share to a certain extent. And that's normal. And I don't expect any of us to learn to share everything. That would be almost impossible. Oh, I say hi to Jacob. So that is just part of our learning experience. This is why we are so lucky to have Christ as the governor of our planet, right? And in Christ's missions, there's been many other wonderful messengers: Socrates, Buddha, Lao Tzu, right? All these different people, Zoroaster, John the Baptist. All these people come and tell us what we should be doing. Abraham. All these people are here to help us shed light on how we should remake our character. And what I'm trying to do here is let you know what is waiting for you, right? The books by Allan Kardec, of course, which you can get on PDF. And of course, then in my book here, this is what is talked about. Heaven and Below, Book 1 of Spiritism. You can go to my website, nwspiritism.com, and you'll see the books I've written. But please read the Spirits book. That should set you up. But what I have done on my books, I have taken the literature from many different Spiritist mediums, and I've tried to put them into a understandable digest. Like, so I have Explore Your Destiny, talking about earth and heaven and how the earth has been guided. I have the Case for Reincarnation, talking about reincarnation, how it works, what the process is. I have the Problem and Solution, which is telling you, if you look at the episodes of your life now, you can interpolate what you should learn, what you've done in the past, not perfectly, but you can interpolate what you've done in the past and what you're supposed to be learning now. And the more you can open your heart and learn those lessons with certainty, and learn them just as they, you know, Jesus said, come to me like a child, right? Come with the lack of pride and with humbleness, that you have something to learn. Also, one of the books I have is more of my personal, is the Spiritism, the 7 tenets of Spiritism, how they impact your daily life. And I talk about how they impacted my daily life and how I start seeing the signs and signals of the spirits being involved in our lives. And I think this is why, you know, I want to take these talks to you, is because, you know, when I was growing up, and even as a young adult, I thought of, you know, I believed in God. But I believe that we were, you know, far removed. It's like we were on this little planet, and there's probably other life on other planets, and we were there, and okay, and it was like, okay, do what you do best. But with Spiritism, you understand how involved. It's like more like we're kindergarten students who are running around the classroom, completely oblivious to the teachers and their assistants watching everything we do, because that's really what's happening. We are just swimming in a sea of spirits who watch what we do. And there are other spirits who are not so good, right? Not so advanced, not very mature. We're just like on the classroom, are trying to tell us what they believe, and which is, mostly incorrect and nonsense. And that's why we're here. We're here to filter out those bad ideas. We are here to learn to follow our conscience and to learn to say, and then when ideas come to our head that it is against what our conscience tells us, that's where we need to have the self-discipline to deny that and to take it out of our minds. But that's also why I want to talk to you about everything that was taught the Reverend Vale Owen, so you can understand heaven, you can understand what the spirit world and why you are fighting so hard and why it is so difficult for so many people here on earth. And yet the rewards are there. Many times under Luis's books by Chico Xavier, they have said time and time again that the reward is 100 times more than what you are sacrificing on earth. And I'm hoping by conveying to you of how powerful you are and how you can create, houses and lives. You can live a life of intellectual curiosity. You can come to earth, help other spirits. You can, with your free will, you can guide the type of talent and the type of things you want to do. And you'll never be bored. And the spirit world, you'll never be sick, right? You'll never grow old, because we look and appear as we want to appear. So those are the great truths of heaven. So I want to leave you there. I want to just thank everyone for being part of our time today. And I just think that I'm hoping that we are helping people here on Kardec Radio. I know that we've been having quite a few new groups all the time coming to us. And that please tell your friends. Don't impose Spiritism on us. But if the time is right, talk to them. Talk to them about Spiritism. Talk to them about Kardec Radio. The Facebook page, the Kardec Radio Facebook page, lead them to the blog. Share the videos on Kardec Radio page with other pages on Facebook. Just put it in front of them, because I believe there's many spirits who know about Spiritism, and then when they come to earth, they just need us to kind of shine some sort of light, and to remind them of Allan Kardec, Spiritism, so they can start exploring it themselves. So I just want to thank everyone who's been here, and please, just blessings for everyone. And I'll say good night to you on this Sunday night. I would like to thank everyone for listening to our program on Kardec Radio, and to point you in a direction to find more information about the spirit. And thank you, everybody. Around us. You can visit my blog at www.nwspiritism.com. Again, that is www.nw, as in Northwest, spiritism.com. And if you are ever in the Northwest, I certainly would welcome to have you come to our meeting on Bainbridge Island near Seattle in the state of Washington. Many blessings to all of you, and please continue to explore Spiritism and the spirit world around us.